was setting up online training and learning programs at Fortune 500 companies, the US government. I was thinking, man, I wonder if WordPress has anything. So I kind of Googled WordPress LMS. I went to the plugin repo. There was nothing. I would put a little email sign up at the top of this blog. This is kind of cool. Like, people are signing up for this to know more about my software that doesn't exist. After getting like 1,000 or 1,500 people, I was like, this is something serious. I think I need to consider it. And I was freaked out because I had just spent this money to have this thing developed. Now one of the biggest names, or the biggest name in WordPress at the time, was coming out with something similar. This is stupid, but I launched my product at like midnight. That was dumb. Don't launch your product at midnight. But I did. And I remember seeing the first couple sales come in. I was like, oh my gosh. And I went to bed and I woke up to thousands of dollars. And I was like, oh my, this is crazy.
Hey there, and welcome to this WP Beginner interview. And today I've got a super special guest. You might know one of the products that they developed and they're the founder of. You might have heard of it, LearnDash, but I'm not going to say much more. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So Justin, for anyone who hasn't come across your work yet, can you introduce yourself and share what you're building?
Hi, I'm Justin Ferriman. Thanks so much first, Ryan, for having me here. It's always a pleasure to talk about the journey of LearnDash and WordPress in general, and to help some other folks out that are trying to do something similar. Right now, to answer the latter part of that question, I'm not building anything. I did LearnDash from 2013, it launched, and then I sold in 2021 to Liquid Web. And I was on board for, I think, a year during that transition phase. I left, kind of dabbled in software, and was coaching in the WordPress space for a couple of years.
What were you doing before LearnDash, and did you know anything about WordPress? How did it all start for you?
Yeah, I was first introduced to WordPress in college. I just kind of started a blog on WordPress.com about politics and religion. So, stuff that everybody likes to read about, right? But it was my first experience in blogging on a regular basis. And in terms of my professional career, I was in the e-learning space. So I was setting up online training and learning programs at Fortune 500 companies, the US government, and things like that. I dabbled in WordPress. I'm not a developer by any means. I just knew how to cobble together some themes and plugins. I dabbled in it for my family. I had an aunt who was a photographer, so I set up her site. And I was always keeping my eye out for opportunities in terms of getting out of the corporate world. That was something that I learned I didn't like, but I did like the industry I was in, and kind of ended up marrying the two at some point.
How much experience did you have in terms of like e-learning and platforms and things like that before you got into it?
Quite a bit. The whole idea of the WordPress LMS came up from a conversation I was having with a client. We were trying to choose whatever LMS that they were going to use. This was a very big organization. They were about to spend a lot of money on an LMS, and there was certain providers that we always kind of talked about. The concept of an open source LMS came up, and there was some enterprise version open source LMSs, not many, but Moodle being a very popular one that folks probably have heard of. But there were some others. And I remember I went back to the hotel that night, and I was thinking, man, I wonder if WordPress has anything. So I kind of Googled WordPress LMS. I went to the plugin repo. There was nothing. And so this is kind of a cool idea. So I set up a website, a blog, and I just started blogging about the concept of having an online training program or learning program on WordPress, and why the open source aspect, the flexibility of plugins, things like that were very conducive to online learning. And that's kind of what sparked the entire journey of LearnDash.
How did that progress for you? So you were writing on this blog about what you had found, like this gap in the market essentially. How did that progress into kind of then coming to LearnDash? Was there someone else that got involved, or was a conversation started in that way?
So I started that blog in March 2012. It was wplms.org at the time, because that was how we all did it back then. And the blog itself, I did blog about this gap. I'm like, why isn't there something for WordPress? And this is why WordPress would be great. But then I also just blogged about e-learning concepts, gamification, which was very new in the 2012 time frame. We hear it all the time now. But I talked about just different trends that were happening, technical things that are kind of pretty maybe boring for people outside of the instructional design LMS space. And I would put a little email sign up at the top of this blog. It was just like one of those email bars at the top that were on every page. And I think my call to action was like, enter your email to be notified when WP LMS releases. I didn't know if I was going to create it, but I just put this up there. And I started getting people signing up. I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like, people are signing up for this to know more about my software that doesn't exist. So I ultimately, after getting like 1,000 or 1,500 people, I was like, this is something serious. I think I need to consider it. I would, in my off hours at work and in the hotel, I would start kind of specking out what I wanted it to look like, the user flow, and creating these kind of like technical communication documents, something I could hand over to somebody. I called different agencies. I had interviews with contractors, freelancers, and I was trying to find somebody to build it because I couldn't build it. And I eventually found an agency in October of 2012. They started the build and with my documents. And then in January of 2013, I launched it. And I was able to launch from day one being profitable because I had this email list that I created that kind of was, this. I gave them a great discount right away. So I knew I would at least recuperate my investment. So after a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, I earned back the money I spent with the agency. So for me, I had my full-time career. So I was like, oh, cool. It's like no money spent. And I had found in that process a contract developer, a great guy. He was actually from the e-learning space, not from WordPress, which ultimately I think it helped us move quickly, but we had to go back and kind of clean up the code at some point because to make it more WordPress friendly. And 4 months after the launch, I was reinvesting 100% back into this developer to fix the issues that we had. And in April 2013, I left my corporate career to do it full time.
I imagine you could make decisions quite quickly being the two of you. So it's probably quite agile in that way, in terms of developing the product then.
It was, yeah. And actually right when, my hand was kind of forced to come out because in October or November of 2012, as a reminder, we launched January 2013, Woo Themes at the time, I'm dating myself now, but Woo Themes came out with, they were going to have a theme, and then they said, no, we're going to make a plugin for online courses or something like that. They didn't call it an LMS. I was the only one calling it an LMS because it was very technical jargon. And then people started shifting as they saw I was getting traction with that. They said they were going to come out with one. And I was freaked out because I had just spent this money to have this thing developed. Now one of the biggest names, or the biggest name in WordPress at the time, was coming out with something similar. At the same time, it was kind of validating. I was like, oh, okay, well, this must be good timing for this. And they would come out, and obviously everything they had was like very polished and very well done. They had these seasoned developers. I had a developer that wasn't even from WordPress, but we were able to move quickly. Like you said, like they were kind of more structured in their approach, which was great. They needed to be, but I was more scrappy and I knew the industry better than they did. Like they were a bunch of developers. I was an e-learning expert. So I was able to speak the language, be more pointed in my marketing, and then also move a little bit quicker. Sometimes it was a little hacky at the time in terms of the code and stuff, but we cleaned it all up. And that was a big part of why we did so well.
Yeah. And what was your thought process after launching?
Initially, so I was working my full-time job. So it was just kind of like fun. I remember I went into work that day. I walked in and I was on cloud nine because this is stupid, but I launched my product at like midnight because I was like, I said I'm going to launch it on this day. I got to do it right at the time that the clock strikes, 1 or midnight. So that was dumb. Don't launch your product at midnight. But I did. And I remember seeing the first couple sales come in. I was like, oh my gosh. And I went to bed and I woke up to thousands of dollars. And I was like, this is crazy. I drove in to work and I didn't like the project I was on anyway. So I remember going in there being like I've already made like a ton of money today. Like I was just feeling good. I mean, yeah, I was in my 20s, so I was feeling good. Yeah. I was allowed to feel like a little bit of ego going on. So I came in, I remember, and then I had like meetings, and so I had to get back to my regular job. And I did this back and forth, like I said, for like 4 months. And it wasn't so typically what happens with a product launch, so this is something maybe an actionable takeaway, is that you'll release something, there'll be hopefully if you've done marketing correctly, an uptake in interest. Like people are like, oh, cool. So like you'll make a lot of money, and then you'll see it start to go down and down and down the daily. I was expecting that anyway. You can't have the launch numbers all the time. And it just kept going down. And I was like, man, where's it going to bottom out? But what happens is that the market adopts it. Then there's kind of like this retracting of the market as the early adopters and stuff try to see, is this worth it? Is it what's going on here? And if it is worth it, they start telling people, and then it comes back. So I remember on my birthday, it was in February, and the launch was in January. It was the first day there was like 0 sales, like 0. And I was like, and oh man, what's going on? And then one sale trickled in like towards the end of the day. But I was devastated because I was like, I thought this was going to be my ticket out of the corporate world. And then it picked up a little bit more. But I remember there was one day in particular in March that I wasn't sure what's going on. And then I had 10 sales, it was $69. So $690 came in on the one day. And I was like, I didn't do anything special. It was just a normal day. And at that point, I was like, I'm leaving my job, because if I can have days like this when I'm not giving it full-time attention, then if I give it full-time attention, like I can increase that frequency.
And you said at the time that you were growing the team, so you had obviously support team. You were growing that support team as well. Did you find that helped as well drive things forward, in terms of having a team around you as well, starting to build that team out, that you could start focusing a little bit more on certain areas instead of, that many hat situation a lot of founders find themselves in? Yeah,
and I actually tell people now, like, hire quickly or quicker than I did. It was 2013 when it launched. I had the contract developer. I think it was, I don't know, don't quote me on this, maybe end of 2014, or it was definitely by 2015, but like I waited too long for support. But then I just kind of went all out in terms of hiring people. It was good not to hire initially. I was doing support, so I could see exactly how people were using the product, exactly how exactly what was working, what wasn't working, what people were asking for. So that was very valuable to me, and I could relay that very easily to the developer I was working with. Also, it created a connection between me and the customer. If somebody else was going to, for example, the Woo Themes example, they went there, they maybe bought their product, support ticket, 24 hours minimum. Some rep gets back to them asking them to deactivate their plugins or something. With me, it was, the founder was right there. And so on one hand, it was good because it created that connection. But as time went on, I found that to be more of a burden, that people could just tap me on the shoulder, felt like they could. I also wanted to be growing and creating more trust. And so, I hired support, and that leveled up, because these people were better than me in terms of they just had that personality to do support. And I could think creatively about the business. I was getting bogged down in the day-to-day. And so I started thinking more high level and thinking about what kind of releases we need to do. And actually one of the most successful releases in LearnDash history came when I was officially out of support and content marketing and stuff. I would jump in if I wanted to, but I didn't have to be in it. And that's important to never stay in one place. It's okay to do that kind of work initially for anybody starting a business, software or not software, just to do those entry level positions, just so you understand how it works. But then you need to move on. You need to move out. You can't just stay there. And I think the fear that people have is they want to keep doing what they know has worked, and that was my fear. You said that one of the biggest releases came from when you were able to do that and focus yourself on something else. So how did you keep your product focused while letting it evolve? Well, a lot of the product's direction came from my expertise in the e-learning space. I was keeping my tabs in that space more than WordPress, really. I mean, there was WordPress trends that we were keeping up with, but I wanted to know what was working in the online education space, and not just course creators, but the learners. So the big differentiator with LearnDash across many of these platforms is that when I was running things, it was built for obviously the creator, but also to what was the best way to relay information so the learners learned. Because in online courses, a conversion is a completion, and online course completions are pretty poor. So if you have a learner, say they bought your course and they complete the course, they're more likely to be a referral, for someone else to buy more courses, to actually learn what you taught them, which is the point, and improve their lives, let's presume, in terms of the content that they purchased. So for me, I was keeping tabs on the e-learning space. And when I saw LearnDash kind of stagnating in terms of the e-learning trends, they weren't necessarily in the product. I jumped on making that happen for LearnDash 3.0, which was a 2019 release, I think. LearnDash 3.0 came out. At the same time, I raised prices. I also, I think, got rid of like the renewal discount. I think we might have been doing something like that at the time. And then, the release came, and going forward, because I had the marked, the line in the sand from pre 3.0 to post, there was a 22% increase in revenue. So it was not just the price increase, but people were loving what we had done. And then, features and all that stuff are a fleeting advantage. I knew that, like all the competition in the space, which there was more, they all rushed to kind of like add in that stuff. But I loved that. I loved kind of like setting that bar, and then everybody else would get there, and then trying to set the bar again and push that industry in the direction. And that wouldn't have happened if I was answering support tickets. It was really driving home a vision and communicating that vision, because I was the one that wrote all the blog posts, the releases. I did the videos. I was the face, I guess, of everything to communicate this message that we had, and this, kind of our mission for everybody. And I think that resonated with people, because like they saw me get excited, so they're like, oh, this is pretty cool, I'm gonna get excited.
So for people that don't know, what was in 3.0 that basically made it different to and made you excited?
There's so much now, I'm gonna have to remember. A big thing was focus mode. Focus mode was like that whole like immersive experience that came about, but it also allowed you to use things like Elementor and things like that when creating in focus mode. So it had that aspect. There was a branding aspect to create like a unified brand across, like when you're jumping in and out of focus mode, which people really loved. And I know like a lot of like LearnDash and then other players have this kind of thing now. It's pretty par for the course, but at the time it really wasn't. And so those were some major ones. We gave more flexibility in how the course content was offered. We had this kind of like Netflix video style where you could put in videos, and when the video completed, it would mark the lesson complete and move to the next one without having to like be all click button-y, like next, and all that. There were more that I'm definitely missing. From a code perspective, I know we cleaned up a bunch of code. We created this huge support site that was part of marketing. I realized that support docs are like one of your best marketing tools. And so I actually hired a third-party contractor to rewrite our docs completely from an outsider's perspective. Well, they were kind of a LearnDash power user in our group, so I reached out to them and I said, hey, do you want to write the documents? And so that was a huge hit with people. It brought in, obviously, more search traffic. It made people have confidence in our offering because it was just so well done. I researched all these support doc sites across big SaaSes and other software to see like what works, what is the best way to learn, because that's where I come from, this product, and like how can we do it in a way that was very user friendly. So like that was another part of it. So it was like a 360 overhaul of just for the user, for the learner, everything, and it really resonated.
From your point of view, was that basically from everything you were seeing elsewhere when you were watching what was going on in the e-learning space, and maybe looking at what customers were saying as well, probably, and like you say, at learners, is that where everything came from in terms of those ideas?
Yeah. I mean, it was the industry. It was also listening to customers, the support, how people were using it, what they wanted to use LearnDash for, and helping them to do that. But there's other things like, I think to this day, there's no one else that does this feature that I was very adamant in. And it came around, I don't know if it was 3.0, but it was around that time, maybe a little before, maybe a little after. It was actually a little before, because we ended up redoing our course builder in 3.0, which is super slick, like the whole drag and drop and things like that. The ability to share lessons across courses. I don't think any other WordPress solution does this still. I think you have to like create duplicates and all that. You could just create one lesson, and it could be lesson 2 in this course and lesson 5 in another course, and it doesn't impact the tracking or whatever. This was a complicated thing to do, but you see it in the e-learning space all the time. Like, they're not duplicating lessons, they're just reusing content. And it's still like this major thing that separates LearnDash from these products out there. That alone, I think, is why somebody should get the product, because it's built with that like extra bit of attention to detail from the e-learning space.
What three things do you think, if you could extract them from that time, did you learn through building and eventually selling LearnDash?
Code doesn't matter. 100%. And I say this because I've seen it to be true, but it just doesn't matter. I say it from a place of experience in that our code was terrible the first 2 years or something. It was so bad, but it did what it was supposed to do. And more importantly, the marketing did what it's supposed to do. If you have a great product, and a lot of people do create great products, but nobody's using it, I mean, who cares? I'd rather start a company or have a company whose marketing is on point, and marketing can seem scary. Just your messaging, it needs to be consistent. And whatever method you use, podcasting, if people are still blogging, I don't know, but I think it's important to kind of dabble in all. Anything you can do it consistently, create the connection, and don't be afraid to pivot if it's not working entirely. And then also working on that messaging on your sales site. Make sure your website's like just on point. I wrote all the sales copy. I just had a knack for it, especially from the space. Like I knew how to speak to that space. But marketing is you should start that before anything else, before even building. I mean, that's what I did. However, that's not the only way. I know there's talented developers who just kind of build in public, and people jump on board, and they just are like, I don't really care about marketing. The word of mouth is going to help me, and it does. So I would say the easier path is to do the marketing path. It's easier to learn how to market than it is to learn to code. So I kind of made that decision early on. I was like, I can just get better at my marketing and just double down on what I'm good at, as opposed to like trying to backfill a skill that I don't really have that takes years and years and years. So that would be like the key takeaways. Just be consistent in your marketing. I guess the second would be get as close to the customers you can. That helped me a ton in the beginning years. Like when I prided myself on, like, people would say, wow, it's been 5 minutes, I got a response in email. Like I wanted to make sure I gave the fastest replies to messages. And then, having pre-sales chat, we dabbled with that. But like if you get closer to the customer and their decision journey, they'll automatically kind of place you above the others. Even like I'm going to write them because they'll get back to me. And so that was a big part of it. Our email sequences encouraged conversation. I often replied to those. Even if it was an automated message, it would be like, hey, tell me what you're working on. I'd love to help. It wasn't even like a sales thing. And people would write in like, hey, this is my project, or this is what course I want to create. Oh, super cool. You could definitely do it with LearnDash. Here's how. Okay, I'm going to get it. It's just a human interaction, which I think is probably more important now than ever before. With all the great things AI does, I think the thing that will sell somebody is not an AI conversation. It's going to be the human to human part of it. So, those two things we did really well. And then always, the third one, just trying not to speak in platitudes, but it's hard. It's like if you feel too comfortable, you need to like push yourself more. Maybe it's the product. Maybe it's doing interviews. Like somebody launches a product, you haven't done any interviews, get on and do them. The first year of LearnDash, I didn't do any of that. I didn't do any interviews. I didn't put myself out there. And when I did, things like LearnDash became like, people didn't know me. They knew the brand eventually. But initially they didn't know either. So I had to introduce people, and I kind of undersold like how important that was to myself. I was like, no, I don't need to do that. That's fine. I'm just going to build a company and blog and be behind the computer. Eventually I was like, no, I should get in and do some speaking things, or, try to join some webinars or roundtables or whatever. That really helped. And then it helped when going to events, WordCamps, for example. I could just share my, I saw you on this thing. Oh yeah, I saw you with, John Smith. Oh, John Smith is really cool. And you just get to meet people that way. And actually that was a huge, one of the huge drivers in LearnDash. I was able to create a lot of connections and great business deals just by putting myself out there.
So say you had to start all again, and you wanted to follow a similar path that you'd gone down, and build a business similar to LearnDash now, where would you start?
Marketing, for sure. Looking at the market and some market research. Actually, mini story. When I ended my time with LearnDash, I kind of was spinning my wheels and like I was still in like, I have to be doing something in software mode. So before the huge boom in AI, I had this idea for an AI software. So I started it the exact same way. I kind of looked around at the market, started blogging, and to this day, that software, I shut it down because there was legal reasons for like, we got hit with like a cease and desist by like other companies that didn't want our AI crawling their content. And it just was like, the joy wasn't there. I think I liked the marketing side of it. I was like, but I didn't really like care about AI or like the software, which I think it was a lesson learned for me. Anyway, it still gets like probably now like 8 to 10 signups daily, but it's not, and it's just like an email list, same thing, like get on this list to sign up or to get in early, get to the software. And obviously I'm not doing anything, but it was the same process. It was just blogging. And then I started putting myself out there in terms of talking about it in interviews and stuff like that, just dabbling. And at its peak was getting like 20 or something signups a day. The joy wasn't there in it for me. So if I were to do it again, I would do something similar. But I would choose something I actually care about, like e-learning or online courses or something that's literally been my whole career, even pre-LearnDash, even my internships back when I was in college were in that space. So I think that's the thing I care most about. WordPress and software, kind of the things that like enabled me to express myself in that space that I really loved. So I learned that it's not the software I love, it's more that industry.
Where do you get your ideas? Where do you get your inspiration? What are you looking at in terms of the market and the gaps and things like that?
I go to Capterra and G2 all the time, still do. I have a file of LMSs that just like in course authoring tools and stuff. And I'm just like, this is what they're doing well. This is what they're not doing well. I just like to keep tabs on it. And so that's generally what I do. And it's funny that you mentioned gaps, because the name of the software I was creating was called Gap Scout. And it was AI to do just that, to find the gaps in the market and across these sites, because that's what I used to do manually when I was running LearnDash. So I was like, why don't I automate this? Anyway, I do that even still today. And then if you are in any kind of industry or space, you're probably part of different groups, or different, even Reddit, subreddits, things like that. And keeping your finger on the pulse of the industry.
Yeah, cool. And what skills and knowledge do you think someone needs to build a successful company?
That's a great one. I don't think there's like a one skill, because a builder, like a really great developer who can move quickly and code something that just works really well, can do just as well as somebody that was like opposite. Like for me, that was able to communicate and effectively like get people excited about a vision that I had for the product. So I think, and I guess the commonality between both those is what you said, Ryan. Put yourself out there. Like whether you're coding or developing something, like you don't do it in a closet. Like tell people what you're doing, get people excited. Like, because ultimately business is working with people. If you suck with people, your business is going to suck. You need to put yourself out there. If you feel like you're not that great, just start practicing. You'll get better. And that's a big part of it. Like people buy into cultures and people, not so much products. So that would be my advice, is just do it with joy, excitement, put yourself out there, and that will be contagious to other people.
What's a small repeatable thing any founder can do to improve their odds of success? So if there's anything in terms of like a habit or that you've created for yourself, or a mindset that you've created for yourself.
Consistency. A lot of entrepreneurs, we jump from like one thing too soon. I blogged 10 months straight for LearnDash, like until even the release came out, before it even made money. And some days I'd be like, what am I doing? Like this is, but like we kind of like are quick to jump ship to some other shiny object. There's a reason you chose what you chose initially. So like just remember that, or keep like looking in the market in that space. And maybe there's like little changes you can make that would make more sense or give you more traction. So that's one piece. I'm just a big believer in putting your face to what you're doing. Like in terms of maybe you're writing articles, maybe you're starting a podcast or a YouTube, but like that in itself, if you build an audience, you can pretty much build anything. Your audience will kind of tell you what they like, but if you have something there already, it's pretty easy to start a software company at that point.
You successfully exited a company you built from the ground up. How do you know when is the right time to exit?
Again, it's like kind of a gut check. I don't know. Like, I've been fortunate. It's luck a lot of times. Like, LearnDash entered the market at a time that the e-learning space was just hitting its upward curve. And I exited the market like at a great time, tail end of COVID. And then like shortly after, like just that next year, a few months later, acquisitions and everything just started, like nobody was doing that anymore because things were changing. When I exited, I was just, my heart was not in it. I had no passion. I kind of dreaded doing the LearnDash thing. And I just knew like there was no joy in it for me anymore. And I started to feel guilty because now I had all these people that relied on the company for their livelihood and LearnDash. I was like, man, they deserve better. They deserve, I don't know, some like a new energy. And so that was kind of the driving factor for me.
What kind of things are you doing day to day? Are you still keeping your hand in, your eye on things in e-learning or in certain spaces and things like that? And is there any things that you're really interested or excited about that are happening right now in spaces?
Kind of went back to the e-learning online course space more, paying more attention there. Actually, it's funny. Not many people know this. I started LearnDash. The only social media platform I used was LinkedIn at the time. And I would kind of like share articles and stuff. And LinkedIn was a different beast then, but I've kind of revisited LinkedIn, and the engagement on the platform in topics like online courses and e-learning and stuff is pretty good. Like, I was like, oh, this is really great. So I've been toying with posting my insights there, keeping tabs on things like I don't like about the industry that need to change, seeing what resonates with people. It's kind of like this high level market research I've been doing. But also just, it's been igniting a little bit more of my passion in that space, and seeing, when I have these ideas or these concepts at a high level, broad level, in terms of how I feel like online learning should look today. And it's resonating. It's kind of encouraging, right? Because I look at the solutions that are out there, the WordPress ones, LearnDash and its competitors. I look at the SaaSes, I look at all these things, and there's a lot of like, they all do a lot of things really well, but they also are all doing like very similar mistakes in my mind. And I'm like, come on, guys, let's like raise the bar. Like we've been doing the same kind of like approach for a while, and it works and it's good. I'm not saying get rid of it, but like there has to be augmentation to that. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm toying with, thinking about now.
And I imagine because you've been able to step back from it as well, you're not fully in it, then you're able to assess it a lot better than people that are in it, which gives you an added advantage.
You're right. Yeah, I'm not in the weeds, so I'm a little bit different perspective of things, and that part's been fun. So like, yeah, that's mostly what I'm keeping my eye on, and living more present. I've kind of gotten into like just mindfulness and things like that. And it's easy to be always forward thinking as an entrepreneur, but it's important to like stop 10 minutes a day and just like close your eyes and just focus on your breathing or something. And it's very cathartic.
And do you think that's something important that all founders should remind themselves of, is having that little bit of break away from things?
Yeah, I learned to do that a few years in, not necessarily the meditation piece, but like stepping away, taking a vacation. Somebody once said to me, like, your brain is like a muscle. So if you're constantly working it out, it never gets a chance to recover or perform in its optimal level. Like the analogy he gave me was like in sports, you have Olympic athletes. They're not like going all out the day before the race. They have to give themselves a little bit of a break so then their muscles can fire. And so I remember finally giving myself vacations where I didn't log in and things like that. I came back like fresher and more creative, which made the business better, the product better, the clients happier. So that's an important aspect too. Self-care is important. I know hustle is like always this buzzword, and like I'm kind of anti-hustle culture, but I understand why people do that. I did that. And you just gotta like take a break and just live life, go outside.
Thanks so much, Justin, for doing the interview. I mean, there's so much we covered there, and your journey is fascinating from where you started, not being developer background is super interesting as well, just coming from the marketing perspective and how you tackle that, and you know how people should think. If anyone wants to kind of follow what you're doing, or you know get in contact with you, what's the best ways for them to do that?
Yeah, right now, I guess just maybe my LinkedIn profile would be like the best way. I mean, I seriously, you make a connection with me, I'll accept it. The only people I remove are the ones that pitch me immediately when, with some AI message. But like LinkedIn, Justin Ferriman, on there, justinferriman.com. That's just my personal site. So like I talk about, not much other than just like what's going on in my life. So I would say LinkedIn's probably a better choice for folks if they're tapped into social media.